And we should be good to go. So welcome, everybody. This is our 24 of 24 hours of UX. So as you would imply, it is the last one. And this is a keynote with Yoel Sumitro. We have here from Jakarta, Indonesia. And we wanted to thank you very much for being with us, especially those who have spent multiple hours here with us. And we've certainly enjoyed the ride, and we really hope that you did as well. So we'll do, the usual introductions. There might be some people who are joining in the 24th hour, never too late, so not a problem. 24 Hours of UX is an event that was brought to life by COVID, because we've been doing in-person events for 8 years in Geneva, Switzerland with Jesse. And then COVID came and we had to cancel event after event. And then we thought, okay, there's probably other groups spread across the world who are facing the same problem. And when you are a local meetup group, a grassroots UX community, then you are facing competition in the online world from literally everyone, from MITs, from Oxfords, from HPs and Googles. So alone, a small community may not stand a big chance. So what we thought, okay, let's band together and let's be bigger than the sum of our parts. So that's what we've been. And this year last year in the first year we had 20 groups. This year we've had over 30 groups joining. We actually had parallel sessions in practicing UX and scaling up UX, elevating UX, we called it, in the tracks. And we've had some really good talks, which will be released. The recordings will be released in the coming days or weeks. And that's about us. We don't want to tell too much more. You can go to 24hoursofux.com to find out a bit more. And a few housekeeping rules just around the screen. So at the bottom, you see some interaction opportunities. So with the smiley, you can send some emojis our way, and we dearly need that because, at the end of the day, it's always good. And for the keynote speakers, it's always good feedback to see these. On the right side, we also have a chat. Feel free to drop in your thoughts there and your comments. If you have questions, we propose that you use the Q&A tab right next to the chat at the top, because then we will be able to keep track of your question, and people can also upvote your question, and you can also upvote others' question. And the very last thing is at the bottom, there's a little icon that says CC. This closed captions, meaning you get subtitles. So depending on your browser, that should be working. I don't know, Jesse, what am I forgetting?
Well, I'm just going to say a couple small words, and then we're going to hand things over to Yoel for the final stretch. I just want to thank all the sponsors and volunteers who've been involved in 24 Hours of UX this year and last year. I mean, the whole thing has been such an adventure. I think without the situation we ended up all in last year, we never would have met. And it's become really an amazing family of people. Most of us have never actually met in person. Peter and I have, because we're in Geneva. But, I have the pleasure of meeting Yoel the other week, thanks to another 24 Hours of UX family member, Shaza, who introduced us. And, that's just, that's a magical thing. And so, here we are. We're learning from each other. We're meeting new folks. So there are some silver linings to this entire thing that we've been through in the past 18 months globally. And I hope that we find ways to take some of that forward into the future and continue to work together. One of the themes of this event today, and in the past, we've done some podcast work, so just a little shout out for our podcast, 24 Minutes of UX right now. If you haven't gone and subscribed to that, please do, because it's how the event continues beyond this single day that we've all been through together, past 24 hours. There are many 24 Minutes of UX episodes already existing and many to come. We're on the verge of publishing several of those. But Why do I say that? The topic of ethics and growth and UX and business, it's all been part of the mix this year, I would have to say. A lot of people talking about these issues, I think for good reason. One of the fathers of UX, the guy who wrote this book, The Elements of User Experience, Jesse James Garrett, just made a post recently about some of the same stuff that Yoel is going to be addressing today. And when Yoel and I were discussing, hey, Yoel, what do you want to talk about? You know, he said, you know, I really want to talk about growth and you know, is it compatible with user experience? And so we're going to have that discussion today. Let's continue that in the Q&A. Without much more talk and further ado, I'm handing things over to Yoel to bring us out through the end of the day. Thank you very much. And
I'd just like to add a small thing, just a quick intro to Yoel. So he's a Senior Vice President of Product Design at Ticket.com, which is an online travel agency or website. And he's been a product designer and UX researcher and designer with companies like Uber and Adidas for a very long time. So we're super happy to have him and really looking forward to this talk because it really brings nicely together one of the things that we have on our banners, which is being global and local at the same time. Because I think this topic is very relevant globally, but at the same time, I'm happy that Yoel is looking at a local aspect of it. So Yoel will disappear from the stage, so it's all yours, but we will remain here. So if there's anything, then we'll come right back.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. We're not going away.
Thank you, Peter.
Okay.
I'm gonna share my screen. Can you guys see my screen? Or I don't see it, but okay. So good morning, everyone. Speaking from Jakarta at 11 a.m. here. My name is Yoel Sumitro. Little bit nervous. I had my glass of whiskey very early this morning because of very nervous giving this last closing keynote to you all. But hopefully this topic will be not that boring for you. I'm going to talk about whether product growth and ethical design can coexist in Southeast Asia. Wait a second. I don't know why. Okay. For the last 10 years, I've been wearing many different hats. A graduate student in the US, a designer in Singapore or in Seattle or in Germany. But for this particular talk, I will frequently return to my research experience for Uber between 2016 and 2018. In those years, I spent most of my working time talking to drivers in Southeast Asia cities like Jakarta, Bangkok, Manila, Ho Chi Minh, Hanoi, and many more. These are the three parts of this talk. I'm going to talk about the problem introduction, my reasonings on why we failed to make ethical design a priority in Southeast Asia, and what we can do about it. So let's start with the first one. The problem introductions. I will begin with this story of mine where I was pretty much bullied at Twitter by Indonesian netizens. So it was in December 18, 2020. For almost 24 hours, my Twitter notification would not stop. And I don't think I'm that popular, and I was certainly much less so on that day. And to be honest, this was not the first time I was bullied for something I tweeted, but this time was quite different. I will admit that some of my tweets can be a bit controversial. For example, I once tweeted about the similarities between Korean romance drama and porn and how they affect our brain. In retrospect, I suppose I can understand why Korean drama hardcore fan club came after me. But for this most recent tweet, I must say that I was a bit shocked and saddened by how much the Indonesian Twitter sphere despised my idea. This one didn't even go after Korean romance drama, BTS, K-pop, or porn. So what did I tweet about? I simply muse about my experience of ordering food using one of the many food delivery apps in Indonesia. On that particular day, I was sitting on my chair and craving for a particular pork dish. But as you know that Indonesia is a country with the most Muslim populations. So there were not that many restaurants selling that particular pork dish. And the closest being is 12 kilometers from my apartment. And at that time I thought that I think it was a little bit unethical for me to make that order. I know that I could be too sensitive, but I just think that it is too much to ask for another human being buy me a single pork dish, only one pork dish, drive for 12 kilometers, and then deliver that pork dish to me. So I tweeted that thought at Twitter. I posted, isn't it too much to ask another human being to buy me a single pork dish, drive 12 kilometers, and deliver it to me? I think I really dug my own grave when I added the hashtag modern slavery there. But now for some context, the cost of that pork dish was around $3. The delivery cost is also around $3. And driving that 12 kilometers by motorcycles takes around 27 minutes to 1 hour, depending on the traffic conditions. Now, you may not agree with me here, but I was trying to convey the lack of dignity given to that food delivery courier. Just because we have the money, $3, does that really mean someone else must drive 45 minutes through the traffic congested street between North Jakarta and South Jakarta so that I can satiate my craving? What does this say about the respective values of each of our time? Or what I thought wasn't worthy of my doing, and so I outsource it to someone else? If I really wasn't willing to get that pork myself, should someone else have to get it for me? On the other hand, the app enabled this to happen without any restriction. The app treated this like any other normal delivery, no restriction, no constraints. There was no extra cost. The delivery charge was calculated like any other based on the kilometers traveled. And the food was delivered as it is in thousands of other transactions that occurred like this one every day. I did not make the orders. Perhaps I should also not make that tweet. Usually I try this one simple question as a sort of moral compass litmus test about whether an action is ethical or not. I will ask this question. Would I want to put this on my friend, family member, or partners? Would I not be shy or embarrassed to look at my friend's eyes and ask him, hey, can you buy me one single pork dish from a restaurant 12 kilometers away and deliver it to me for $3? In this case, I'm pretty sure I could not say that to my friends. However, clearly Twitter disagree with me. They not only disagree with me, they thought I was crazy. Of course, like crazy like rational discourse very infrequently happen on Twitter. But these were the three most frequent arguments I received on why the food delivery case I mentioned was ethical. Number one, we pay for the courier service, and clearly there are those willing to provide it for that price. Number two, for the couriers, it is better to have a low-paying job than no job at all. And number three, the couriers choose freely whether they wanted to accept and fulfill the order. Thus, it was not really slavery. Okay, I admit my use of the word slavery in the hashtag might have been contributing to maybe the already crazy environments of Twitter. And I could choose maybe a milder word. But regardless, these responses awaken in me a deep sadness about maybe like a tech world. those of us who work in the tech industry, who design the apps, motivate these behaviors, and develop these interactions, know for sure that sometimes the freedoms and choices we provide our users are not always liberating. For example, I remember in 2017, I conducted a research project in Singapore and Jakarta with a simple objective: to create an incentive system that directs drivers to the place we wanted them to be and convince them to be online at the time we wanted. The incentive system was a carrot. The drivers may feel that they have a freedom to drive where and when they want it, but if they didn't take the carrot, they starve. When someone, at the time Uber, or we, product managers, researchers, designers, controls the carrot, and there are only precious few carrots to choose from, freedoms is but an illusion. The line between ethical and not ethical motivation within the product we develop can be very thin and easily crossed if not careful. Some other example cases where the line may have been crossed in the context of food delivery here, for example, this one. When couriers need to wait for hours just to buy a bubble tea, a milk drink with some tapioca bubbles on it. And then people can argue, we pay them, we give them tips, so it's not be a problem. Or this one, when couriers need to wade through Jakarta flood waters just to deliver food to those indoors in comfort. Or even this one, this happened yesterday in Jakarta. Because of this called BTS meal, like we all eaters just order food deliveries and ask these couriers to wait for hours to somehow satiate our cravings. But sorry for my ranting, but I would like to look at another case that occurred not long after my tweet went viral to make some comparisons. As in an Indonesian stand-up comedian who has a large following, Panji, tweeted the following: I just texted my tweet about my team about work stuff at 4:44 in the morning on a Saturday. People think working with me is fun, filled with lauders. Entrepreneur Panji is very much different with entertainer Panji. I push people, I'm demanding, and I don't mince words. Plus, I fire people quickly. Indonesia, or at least Indonesian Twitter, went absolutely bonkers because of this tweet. To us, maybe the reaction was similar to a Trump tweet. Plenty of accusation flew. Panji was abusing his employees. Panji was looking down at the little people. Panji was taking advantage of his position of power. Interestingly, the hashtag modern slavery was reintroduced. Do you see the inverse pattern imagined here? That what the reaction was to my tweet? Very similar arguments to those made against my tweet could have been made defending Panji. Panji pays his employees a salary to work for him. They do not work for nothing. For Panji's employee, it's better to have jobs than not. Also, the employees have the freedom to choose whether they wanted to work for Panji or not. So this was not abuse. But they didn't. They pile on Panji. So why did people react differently to a very similar ethical case? This is my hypothesis. I suspect that my tweet was referring to problems that were not problems of the middle class employee, the typical audience on Twitter. In my case, the abuse was directed towards others' problems, specifically to people very different than those tweeting a reaction. But on Panji's tweet, the abuse was aimed to people just like them, normal middle class employee. On Panji's tweet, the abuser was Panji, an easy target, and certainly not you or I. But on my tweet, the abusers are twofold: the tech company who designed the system and where we all work, because it is us, and the users who benefit in participating in that banality, again us, since we benefit from having cheap and convenient delivery that we certainly do not want to give up. On Panji's tweet, since we can envision that one day we can also end up being abused like Panji's employees, while on my tweet, we just cannot imagine being on the courier's shoes. These two tweets happening closely side by side taught me two things. Number one, first, we all are hypocrites in some ways. We tend to care about the things that may affect us or people most like us, while seemingly not concerned at the very similar plight of others not like us. And second, the most important stuff is that the design we make affect people in very different ways. In the food delivery case, our designs made users, the hungry eaters, callous and uncaring. We molded their thinking to believe that it is okay to do whatever you want as long as you are hungry and too lazy to get food yourself. We don't give any nudge or limitation or constraints for those eaters to not making a questionable orders. Our design also affected the couriers by subjecting them to unhuman experience, and worse, by lying to them about having freedom in their choices. I will leave the deeper investigation on our primal natures to the philosophers, psychologists, spiritual leaders, but for this rest of the talk, I'm going to dive into the next two parts. Why we fail to make ethical design a priority and what we can do about it. Let's go to the next one. Why it seems that we fail to make ethical designs. Let's start at the beginning. In Southeast Asia, growth is king. What do you think it is about Southeast Asia that brings sparkles and probably dollar sign to tech investor eyes? Let's review it, what other regions, what made investor want to invest. Australia had stability. Western Europe had good profitability prospects. India and Eastern Europe had quality tech talents. But these positive traits of other regions were never stemmed on Southeast Asia region. The one thing that matters and still does matters is our massive population. On this tiny part of Asia, our population is around 650 million people, bigger than the whole Southeast Asia, South America populations, and maybe very close to the whole European populations, but at the fraction of the land area. It's like eating Big Mac that is half the size but double the calories. The internet and technology adoption rates are very attractive too. In 2021, Indonesia has the 5th most Twitter users, the 4th most Instagram and Facebook users, and the 2nd most TikTok users of any country. This gold mine for investors is fast becoming our Achilles heel if we don't move to prevent it. When global tech companies fail to enter China's market, Southeast Asia become their next target and being chosen just because of our population numbers, but not because of our talent pools, market stability, or long-term profitability prospect, can lead to a very lopsided, if not downright abusive relationship. Regardless when growth is all that one cares about, growth is all that one sees. Thus, these companies focus on 3 things only here: growth, growth, and ever more growth. This growth can come out in any numbers of vanity metrics. Number of new users, number of monthly active users, number of transactions, number of users resurrections. I'm not saying that these metrics are not important in other regions as well, but in Southeast Asia, it seems as if growth and these metrics are the only measure of success. This lesser focus, some might say, like tunnel vision, naturally leads to problems. I give you one example. In 2016, my very first project at Uber in Southeast Asia was to increase the number of new drivers. I conducted a usability test for the registration platform. There I found a problem. The prospective users are not very familiar with the concept of emails. Like these drivers, middle-aged people, they don't have emails. So they will go to our driver registration centers and just guess what our solution was. The operation people on the ground simply created an email account for them and then choose a password for them too. And bam, our problem was solved. Our new user metrics was skyrocketing. Rather than really solving the problem, the lack of understanding of emails, we prefer to choose a shortcut. We just created an email account for them. As you can probably guess, we soon starting receiving a large number of tickets from people who could not access their email accounts. Because our own people who choose their password for them, like Uber Jakarta 123, Uber password 123, and the like. Why was no designers or product manager on top of this to solve this problem? I would actually ask this question to myself. Why at that time I was so stupid to not raising this root problem to my headquarters while I was employed there as a UX researcher? Wasn't that should be my job? Okay, truth. I did ask the questions, but it's really hard to build your case when people just see your users as numbers and bars on graph. The bottom line is that it was ingrained in almost everyone's mind that the ultimate prize in Southeast Asia was growth, and everyone was gunning for it. This made going against the grain or building the case for other areas of improvement, like driver education about email or providing maybe a different sign-up credential for them, like phone numbers, which didn't directly affect growth in the short term, but may have led other long-term benefits, an uphill battle, a really hard battle to be fought. Bear with me this somewhat crude analogy, but when someone fall in love with you because he or she has a food fetish, it is very unfulfilling to have sex with your partner without the use of a food. When someone fall in love with this region because of the growth perspective, it's very hard to have a discussion which is not involving growth. So that was my first explanation. Number two is that we lack strong governance. Now it is time to look in the mirrors and point the fingers at ourselves. Yes, our governments have not always really cared that much about our well-being. Imagine if you will, like the placement of something like ethical design in the priority ladders for the governments. When number one thing that they care is just attracting money from foreign investors, and the number one thing that the investors care about our market is growth, where will it land? Probably somewhere close to the trash bin. One embarrassing instance occurred not too long ago in Indonesia, maybe like last month. Social security data, all of the email addresses, phone number, password, salary data of 280 million of Indonesia were leaked and sold for cheap on the internet. With only 0.15 Bitcoins, you could get the whole data set. If something like this happened in Germany, can you imagine the response? At the very least, someone in the government will be fired or forced to resign right away. But I would ask you to guess, what did our government do? They responded by stating, we have blocked the access to that forum with selling the data immediately. Like, wow, great work, guys. Clearly, we have the best tech minds in the government on this case. I know that this accident is a pretty ridiculous example, but it should give you an idea how we cannot really rely on the government to lead here. We don't have the luxury of strong governments with a history of regulation, good governance, and strong enforcement like many Western countries that have. I'm going to give you 3 other examples I saw during my research time in 2017 or 16 actually, to illustrate this ignorance. Number 1, where there were conflicts and clashes between ride-hailing drivers and taxi drivers in many Southeast Asia cities. Number 2, when many ride-hailing motorcycle drivers received this physical intimidation and abuse from the non-ride-hailing drivers. And when there were mass demonstrations to fight for a more dignified minimum income for these drivers. In all of those 3 cases, I would argue that our government play a very minimum role or maybe non-existing role at all. So there was the second one. We have discussed two main actors who have abdicated responsibility in making ethical product design a priority in Southeast Asia, hurting our communities and ourselves, the tech people, and the local governments. So now let's talk about the final actors, us, the designers and researchers. However, before I give my notion about how apolitical we are, let me start building a case on how we have ignored a complex human interactions for the sake of having the priority to make a seamless human-computer interaction. In this book, Well Designed by John Kolko, he argues that one main purpose of design is to humanize technology. He also adds that the objective is to make technology fit appropriately into our human interaction. It sounds good, right? And it also, I believe, have started with good intention. But I think we have delved too deep into this mandate and have now crossed the line. We have succeeded at humanizing technology, but at the expense of hiding people inside it. We don't even use the term people or human anymore. Instead, we use like the generic, barely human term users. The most popular university major in North America, which produces most UX designers and researchers, is probably human-computer interaction. So maybe we should not fault the thought leaders of this field who coined that term, that it makes us to focus on human-computer interactions. Although again, we have elevated it to like almost godlike status and have become so good at executing it that we execute it almost too well. The result is that we have ignored and hide complex human interactions into the most seamless human-computer interactions. Twitter even needs to keep reminding their users that the people they interact with in Twitter are human. Isn't it that sad? The people who use Twitter, who tweet at other people, don't even know anymore that the people on the other side of that communications are humans too. This is the quote from Christine Shu. She said, in the heat of the moment, people can forget there's another human behind a Twitter account. By showing what we have in common, we hope to remind people of what connects us as a starting point. We are so good at hiding another human inside our product for the sake of a seamless user experience. One good example of this comes from my research on driver e-wallets. In 2017, I need to did a research on driver e-wallet in Bangkok, Jakarta, and Philippines, and Cebu. Originally, one of the reasons Uber was popular in the US because it offered cashless transactions. People did not need to worry about not getting the right amount of change, even having money on them. They could just hop out when they arrive at their destinations, and Uber took care of the rest. No need to settle payments or face an awkward tipping situations. Everything was handled behind the scenes. And voila, a seamless user experience is born. But the anecdotes I found in Bangkok, Jakarta, and Cebu at the time told me a different story. Drivers hate cashless transactions. Not because the experience is not seamless, but there is one thing that they really miss, these human-to-human interactions. One of the drivers told me like this: when our riders pay using cash, they usually hand it to me, they will look in my eyes and say thank you. But for the credit card users, I feel that they are generally ruders. They never say thank you to me and just leave the car right away after they arrive at the destination. Do you think that the credit card users are ruder than cash users? I don't think so. But it's just that our design that somehow influence this feeling that the drivers have. The practice of ignoring complex human interaction for the sake of making seamless human-computer interactions can be also seen as a political act, because inside that human interaction, there are always socio-economic political power play happening. This apolitical act can be one of the main culprits of producing those unethical design. As it was written by Timothy Mitchell and Tanya Murelli, they said, design, conceived as a politically agnostic technical discipline concerned with the inefficiency of system, cannot solve problems generated by the larger political context in which it operates. In fact, such design intervention risks perpetuating rather than challenging the power dynamics at the root of the social issue it is deployed to address. So, this politically agnostic act or mindset can even be more dangerous when they happen in Southeast Asia. Why they are even more dangerous here? I will just give you 3 data points. This is the first one. Due to the quite low GDP per capita of the Southeast Asia countries, many tech companies can rely a lot on human resources here. Look at this product that one of our super app provides. Go Massage, Go Clean, Go Glam. You can order a therapist, a mechanic, a barber, a cleaners to come to your place with just one click. And in the context of the tech and product development costs, the unit economic cost of providing this product and services is becoming more making sense due to our low GDP per capita. So basically, there are more people are involved in this ecosystem here in Southeast Asia, and becoming politically agnostic can be very dangerous where there are way more humans involved in our product ecosystem here. Another data points, the inequality gap in Southeast Asia is also among the largest in the world. You can see by the Gini coefficient here. And on top of that, if we are looking at Hofstede power distance dimension, which measure how a society handles inequalities among people, Southeast Asia countries tend to have high score on this dimension. I don't say that this is a bad thing, but it just means that they are very dependent on hierarchies and there are unequal rights between power holders and non-power holders. These above 3 facts will make a political act as designers or researchers be even more dangerous in creating those ignorance or unethical design. Going back to the food delivery case I mentioned before, this diagram illustrates how we think about our users if we are apoliticals. We think that we just need to divide our design teams into 3 studios, one for the eaters, one for the restaurant, and one for the couriers. But I think these diagrams illustrate more accurately the existing condition on the ground. There is this socio-economic political power play happening between our users, and as I mentioned before, some factors such as inequality, low GDP per capita, and our unique culture will just make this power play even dangerous to be ignored. Unethical design can be the byproduct of our politically agnostic mindset. So, for the summary, there are 3 culprits here: the absence of governments, our obsession of growth for growth here, and how we, the designers, are apolitical. So we have learned what the problem is, but what we can do about it. Sorry, let me drink first. What we can do about it? Number 1, reflecting on the importance of ethical and inclusive design. We have spent the last decade advocating the importance of design, right? We have been advocating how design should get a seat at the table together with the other functions: engineering, product, marketing, business, data operations. In our journey to get that coveted seat at the tables, we have been going the extra mile. Look at the most popular topics on Medium at the moment or in conference. From all set of design thought leaders come these phrases: business design, show empathy with your colleague, design with data, the importance of design. These topics are good and needed, but maybe it is a high time we stop advocating about the importance of design and start advocating about the importance of ethical and inclusive design. But before we just do that, let's take one step back to ensure that we all are on the same page. Because I believe this one, that when the why is strong, the house will be easier. But since I'm not Don Norman, I don't think I will try to coin a new purpose for design. I will just present to you some of the core concept of design that I think together can form a strong set of whys for us to build off, to design and research ethically. These are the 3 concepts that I'm going to talk today. The definition of design, the nature of design, and the design justice. The first concept is the definition of design. I quoted the definition of design previously from Kolko, but for these sections, I would use the term from Victor Papanek, the father of design. In his seminal book, Design for the Real World, Papanek wrote this: all are designers, and design is the conscious effort to impose a meaningful orders. I love 2 important parts of this definition. First, by saying that all people are designers, design is explicitly inclusive and comes from all types of activities. Design doesn't need to be monopolized by us, by the elite practitioners who know what is the best for the users they design for. And second, I love the use of the word meaningful. Only humans can put meaning into something. Computers, machine, or other device cannot feel this objective. And by using the word meaningful, Papanek acknowledged that design result is subjective. Design is not like deciding which code is the most efficient, because that can be objectively answered. But it is an invitation for us to always reflect on the product we design, whether it can be meaningful for one group of people, but abusive toward others. The second concept is that design is never neutral. Design is political. The most used example for this concept is Robert Moses Bridge. He designed a bridge to Long Island which was designed purposely low enough to hinder public transportation to get there. By doing this, Moses successfully made the beautiful islands there to be enjoyed by the middle and upper class people, who were mostly white people at the time, to drive there using their private cars. This story was popularized by Langdon Winner, who wrote this quote: "Design have politics," or "design artifacts have politics." Later, this Robert Moses story was proved to be a myth. He didn't intentionally design the bridge to thwart POC away. However, you can find more recent examples about how design is political. Many examples in this really good book from Mike Monteiro, Ruined by Design: How Designers Destroy the World and What They Can Do About It. He writes, "We are not hired to just dig a ditch, but to evaluate the economic, sociological, and ecological impact of that ditch." So this activity is ultimately political. We won't be able to evaluate design in a vacuum space. And this brings us to the third core concept, design justice. I learned the term design justice for the first time from Sasa Constanza Chalk book. The title is Design Justice. I really recommend you to read this amazing book. But there's this one highlight that I want to share with you. Design justice centers around the analysis of how design affects the unequal distribution of benefits and burdens to groups of people at different locations within the matrix of domination. Many big words were thrown there, but design justice used the concept of the matrix of domination from someone named Patricia Hill Collins, who used it to describe the linked system of white supremacy, patriarchy, capitalisms, and settler colonialisms. But if I am to use a layman example, remember the food delivery case I told in the beginning? That example shows how design gives different and disparate impact, benefits, and burdens to its three main factors: the restaurants, the couriers, and the eaters. The weakest actors, the couriers. They are definitely in the non-pleasant situations because of this matrix of domination they experienced at the first place. For the eaters, the benefit is that, oh, I got my warm meal. But the burden for them is just, oh, I need to pay $4 for someone to send a food during Jakarta flood. But for the couriers, the burden is like a fucking flood, snakes on crocodiles. If they want to send that food delivery to these eaters. This is an example how the design that we make, we always need to reflect how they give unequal benefit and burdens to our users. He he also wrote that an object affordance are never equally perceptible to all. I'm just gonna stop there. Affordance are never equally perceptible to all. So Don Normans somehow popularized the word affordance. It means like it means that properties that determine just how the thing could possibly be used. And also there is another concept called disaffordance, how the properties that give cues how some actions will be blocked or constraints to our users. So let's say we look at the case of that food delivery order during a flood. The disaffordance for these three different users are very different. For the eaters, it's merely their conscience. For restaurants, it's just their reviews. But for the couriers, the disaffordance to not execute that food orders are way higher. They may think that I only need one more orders to get the daily incentive, or my account could be deactivated if my order acceptance rate is under X%. So I hope that these three core concepts of design, the purpose of design, the political nature of design, and the design justice can act as a bedrock for us to advocate for more ethical and inclusive design. Remember, when the why is strong, the how will be easier. Number 2, improving our design or research methods and practices. Two more points. Hang with me. When our design practices, processes are not ethical, how can we expect that the result to be? If the research process is not inclusive, I also cannot expect that the insights to be either. Look at the most popular methods in design world. Design thinking, a tool that has been used as our proud banner to get that seat at the table for driving business innovations. But the tail end of the above definitions, requirements for business success, suggest to the conflicts of interest that complicate the use of design thinking. It can be the conflict of interest between growth and ethical design, and with this definition, for sure, the method will choose growth. This method emphasizes market friendliness, often coded as sustainability as a prerequisite for successful solution. And as a result, can be very lopsided toward business growth. Miroski in 2013 had this concern about design thinking. He called design thinking as a framework whereby the market stands as the ultimate arbiter of truth and where freedom is recorded to make anything the market allows. One could also argue that design thinking is not a very inclusive method. It positions us, designers, to design for our users, not with the users. We are the group of people who know the most about their problems, as well what is best for their solution. We even become a very strict gatekeeper. We decide when they can join our activities, on what time, and when we should listen to them, or when we can believe whatever they say. On the research side, it's not much brighter. Look at the common research practice in global tech companies, the ones I did by myself. It could sometimes resemble colonialism. I came to the Southeast Asia market from my fancy office in Silicon Valley, extracted all insight from the population, delivered the report back to headquarters on the golden nuggets existing there, and finally design a product that focused on extracting those nuggets back in the region. So how can we design a better design? How we can use a better design or research method? There are some other popular, more inclusive methods which you can try, that I put some here. And conducting inclusive research and design can be very tricky. It's a broad topic which may require its own discussion. I will leave you for you to deep dive more with these really good resources here about more ethical and inclusive method. Lastly, the action on how we can fix it. I will start with the most simple of acts. Talk about it, write about it, make a fuss about it. I really think enough is enough. We should stop wasting our energy writing and talking about the difference between UX and UI. I mean, this is not important. Or we should stop talking whether the persona is good method or not. Let me answer it once for all. I think persona is shit, but more than that, it's not important to talk about that. Let's move on and discuss on a more meaningful topics, whether our designs continue oppressing some group of our users or whether our design practice is already inclusive. Second, tactical things, hiring more diverse teams of designers and researchers, hiring minorities. Remember this fact, Indonesia has the 5th largest number of Twitter users, 4th largest number of Instagrams and Facebook users, and the 2nd largest number of TikTok users. I did my research. There are 0 Indonesian researchers or designers at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, or TikTok. 0. Nol. Kosong. Nada. I think representations does matter. I don't think we will be able to talk about designing with the communities if having a diverse design or research team is still a nice to have features. Number 3, reflect and act. I won't be able to list all activities we can do on this topic. I don't want to be too prescriptive too. I really believe that value-driven actions are more powerful than a suggestion or prescription for you. That you heard from this random unknown guy who speak with a very thick Indonesian accent here. The act can be simply doing more inclusive research with your product team, creating a ethical design advocacy group in your company, hiring a designer from your users group, advocating for a union group for your users, or simply saying no to some of those dark patterns design decision. For this section, I even created a bingo list. Maybe this simple bingo can be your inspirations to act. So this is the summary. I have 2 more minutes, but I will just answer this question. So, can product growth and ethical design coexist in Southeast Asia? My pessimist answer is actually no. Looking at the current climate, I don't think ethical design will be ever prioritized in this region yet. Growth will be still the king. It will be still a slow progress until we can be there. And I just hope that maybe by having this kind of discussion, we can all collectively speed up the progress. But I can be totally wrong. And I really wish that I'm wrong. So that's all. I will close my talk with this quote that I tweaked slightly from John Maida original quote. He said, "Art raises questions, design answers questions." I will add one thing behind it, that art raises questions, design answers questions, and reflect on the answers. Thank you, everyone.
Well, Yoel, very powerful stuff. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to be looking at the chat, because it's been blowing up like your Twitter account, but in a positive way. What you're saying is really reflecting with people, I think both from Asia and Southeast Asia, but also outside of it. So it was really, really great. And as Jesse said it, really powerful stuff for the ending. In Hungarian, we say that you really put the crown on it. So thank you very much for that.
There is a lot of discussion, a lot of chat. There's a lot of gratitude too, Yoel. So, you've gone out on a limb and you've really taken a risk, and that's very brave. And I really appreciate what you've said and shared. Thank you.
Yeah,
cool. Thank you so much.
We've had a few talks today that were really sort of uncomfortable in a good way, that they weren't the usual suspects. You didn't know what they'll be about. And, like midway through, you were thinking like, I might need to be rethinking some of the things that I'm doing. And this was definitely one of those. So we realized we're at the top of the hour, but nonetheless, Jesse, shall we take some questions? Yoel, can you stay with us for a bit?
I'm just looking through them now.
Yoel, are you okay to stay on, or do you have to drop off?
Maybe 5 minutes or 10 minutes should be fine.
Okay, so Jesse, did you find a good one? And maybe in the meantime, Yoel, you can stop sharing so people get your full view. And but great quote for the end as well. So just
there are quite a few people wondering, what are the red flags to look out for as a designer? They're working in a company, so what are the things they need to sort of pay attention to, the signals as a designer?
So we have this discussion at Uber at that time. We discussed like if there is a tension between drivers and riders, who we should take a stance to. And then my manager said this, like we always need to choose the weakest side. So to answer that question, how to know if there are red flags of unethical design? If I think that somehow we make a decision that continuing abusing that weakest side, right? For example, in this case, if we said couriers and eaters, sorry to say that we actually need to support the couriers more than the eaters because they are on the weakest side in this power dynamics. So I think that's one heuristic that I can think about when we don't really think about that power play and then we choose the wrong side, basically.
Thank you for that answer. I had a question actually that I posted that got the most upvotes so far. So I'll ask it myself, which is, how in your mind can we better balance, what we want for the business, right? Business outcomes with the social and environmental outcomes that we're looking for as well. Is there a way to strike that balance? Have you come across any approaches that allow people to start businesses within the capitalist system and yet, achieve social and environmental outcomes that are also positive?
Yeah. People may disagree with me on this, right? But I think we should always be heavy on the social and environmental outcomes. Because if we talk about balance in the company, there are already so many people are on the business side, the product manager, the business people, and then somehow for us, because we want to fit so much that we also go to that side. I feel that there are enough people on that business side. Let them think about that. And if us think on the other side, where there will be a balance. But if we, the last people who should think about this, are also going to that other directions, I don't think there will be any balance there. But again, people may not agree with me because when you look at those Venn diagrams, it's always like business, technology, and users. But in my opinion, there are already people who think on the other circles. And we should not jump to those other two circles too.
Peter, you want to take the next question?
Which one should we get? The next one with the upvotes. And this might be the last one because you mentioned that he has just a few minutes. So how do we convince higher management to consider ethical design thinking and decision-making without sounding naive, especially in corporate structures when we designers may not have a lot of power when the mindset is always growth is king. So to your point, and it's a perfect linking to what you just said, maybe we shouldn't be thinking of being more business-y, but then how do we have those conversations? And this exactly points to that, like without sounding naive. What are your thoughts on that?
From a pragmatic point of view, I will look at my own position first, whether I have enough credential or trust to do something without permission. Better to say sorry than ask permission. Right? So if, for example, like now, I feel that I have enough trust from the companies, I'm just gonna do it. If there is something unethical, I'm just gonna call it out. I'm gonna do it behind those people who maybe not care about this topic. But again, I mean, to be honest, let's say if you just join a company, maybe this suggestion can be dangerous. Like if you just go down into that route of I want to make an ethical design for this company. So I think just look at your own environments, whether you are you have enough balance or credits to make mistake or just do it without asking permission. I
think that's great. I know probably most people don't care what I think, but I think there's going to be a change. And I think actually the businesses that are the most ethical will be the best businesses in the long term. That's going to be the sustainable model. I think we're facing some serious change in the business world soon, and I hope it's for the best.
Yep. I saw that in the chat, everyone was agreeing to this. I would ask one thing to, reflect in yourself. What sacrifice would you be willing to make? Would you be willing to risk losing your job because, you're not willing to do something that is, unethical and, or some way along the shades of gray, to, not get promoted, to go to another company that pays much less. So think about that, because it's very easy to say, yes, we need this. But then also, this also always comes with a sort of balance. So we can't have both worlds, and it's worth thinking for ourselves, not for the world, but in ourselves. Okay, what am I ready to do?
Yeah.
So Yoel, thank you so much. This was an excellent ending to the 24 Hours of UX 2021 edition.
Bravo. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Yes.
Thank you.
And thank you. And to all of those who are here, what we were thinking with Jesse is that we'd end this session and we'll go to the lounge, and we'll just sit down to one of the random tables. Yeah. And just to have a few minutes chat. I really can only do a few more minutes because I did the full 24 hours and I'm gonna just slide off my chair. But let's go over to the lounge. Let's have a bit of chit chat discussion. We may not be able to fit everyone there because those have a limit, but go to a table and sit down in the lounge.
Head over to the lounge chat. It's still available.
Yeah.
So. We'll end this session and you'll be back there. Thank you so much, Yoel. Thank you so much, everybody out there. Peace.
Talk later. Bye.
Bye.